What's up, guys? It's Crunch Time Convos here, and coming out with a new video, we're going to be talking about who we think are our most underrated players in the league. We're each going to come up with 5 names in no particular order, and we hope you guys like the video. First up, I'd have to pick Goran Dragic. Goran is one of the most underrated point guards in the league. He possesses amazing slashing ability, is a pretty good jumper, and is a good playmaker. He showed this year that he can contribute to a contending team, helping the surprise Miami team reach the finals. And if he wasn't injured in the finals, the outcome of that series could have changed or at least been closer. He started his career off in Phoenix behind Steve Nash, where he didn't get many opportunities to shine. Then he was traded to Houston, where he once again was primarily a bench player. Then he signed with the Suns in 2012, which is when his career skyrocketed. In his 3 years in the desert, he averaged around 17 points, 6 assists, and 1.3 steals per game, while leading that unique 3-guard Suns team to their most success within the last 10 years or so. He was then traded to Miami in 2015 in a 3-team deal, and he's been balling out in South Beach ever since. His Miami averages are 16.6 points per game, 5.3 assists, and 1 steal per game on good shooting splits. As I mentioned before, Goran has been a key component of the success of the Miami Heat, and in their playoff run, the Heat relied on Goran's experience, game management skills, and shifty penetration abilities to be a third star of sorts behind Bam Adebayo and Jimmy Buckets. He's in a contract year, and his superb play will certainly get him a nice bag from a contending team. I feel like he's underrated because people tend to forget how consistently good he's been for the last 6 or 7 years. Most people don't even know who he is. He's right below all-star level, but he's a very, very good starter caliber player. He fits into the modern NBA and is a great change of pace ball handler, and he contributes to team success and culture. Second, I pick Aaron Gordon. Aaron Gordon is an interesting case. Right off the bat, those dunk contests with Zach LaVine have to be one of the greatest of all time without a doubt. He's shown flashes of stardom during his young career, but for every jaw-dropping highlight, there's an equally disheartening lowlight. Gordon has jump out of the gym athleticism, and he can put the ball in the basket. However, his biggest drawback so far in his career is his inefficiency and his lack of a three-point shot. He also has some minor injury issues, but that's less of a hindrance on his on-court success. For his career, Gordon has averaged 12.8 points, 6.4 rebounds, 2.4 assists on 45% from the field, and 32% from 3. In his best season, Aaron Gordon put up 18 points on 43% from the field and 34% from 3, so you can see that his scoring is quite inefficient. It's inexcusable for a modern-day 4 to not have a serviceable three-point shot, but I think most of his lack of success has to do with the system he's in. Orlando's roster is filled with non-shooters like Nikola Vucevic, Markelle Fultz, Mo Bamba, MCW, and Terrence Ross, who all shoot below 35% from the three-point line. This clogs up the paint and does not allow Gordon to do what he's best at, which is rim running. I'd like to see him get moved to a place like Minnesota with Cat, D'Lo, and Malik Beasley, who are all capable shooters that can stretch the floor. I think a lot of casuals sleep on the potential of Gordon because his stats aren't the best, but they don't realize he's not set up to succeed in his current situation. If he can get out of Orlando, I think he can surprise a lot of people. This guy has some serious talent. Third, I have Davis Bertans. They don't call this man the Latvian laser for nothing, because he can shoot the lights out. The 6'10 big man debuted for the Spurs back in 2016 and was a decent depth power forward, but when he got traded to the Wizards last offseason, he went off. He averaged 15.4 points, 4.5 rebounds, and 42% from the 3 on almost 9 attempts per game, and was one of the lone bright spots on the terrible Wizards team. He's a free agent this year, so he's definitely going to get a bag. And teams love guys like him, stretch fours that can shoot better than most guards in the league. When most people think of the best shooting big men in the league, they tend to think about Kat, Jokic, Kevin Love, Porzingis, the usuals. Almost nobody has heard of this guy. Even though he's not only one of the best big men shooters in the league, he's one of the best shooters in general. He was even featured in the 2020 three-point contest during All-Star Weekend. Most casuals don't know who he is because he's not that flashy, he's not that loud, and he's never really going to make your jaw drop. But when your team needs a quick bucket from deep, there's not many other players I trust more than the Latvian laser. Fourth, I have Danilo Gallinari. Gallinari is a similar player to Bertans in their shooting ability, but Gallo is a more complete offensive threat than Bertans. This might be a little OKC fan bias, but Gallo is definitely underrated. He's a certified bucket getter and can drop 20 to 25 points on a nightly basis. He doesn't get the recognition he deserves because, like Bertans, he's not flashy. Gallo relies on his craftiness in the mid-range and his lethal three-point jumper. On the surprise OKC team, Gallo was a star with Chris Paul and SGA, averaging 18.7 points, 4.6 rebounds, and 3 threes per game on 41% from the three-point line. And he looked amazing doing it. He's been putting up these kinds of numbers for almost his whole career, from his days back in NYC to his days in the Mile High City, and he's gotten almost no recognition. People are finally starting to come around to Gallo's game because of how coveted stretch fours are now, but he's still undervalued. I believe he can be a third star on a championship team, and he might find his way onto one this offseason. The Thunder are looking to sign and trade him most likely, so look for teams like Miami or Milwaukee to add this sharpshooter to help strengthen their rosters for late playoff pushes. Finally, I'd have to pick Derrick White as one of the most underrated players in the league. The players on the Spurs seems like always underrated. I guess it's just a byproduct of the Spurs team-oriented type of basketball. There's never really a true star in their system. By all means, White isn't a star, but he's a very, very underrated point guard who plays well on both sides of the ball. This past season, he averaged 11.3 points, 3.5 assists, half a steal per game on 46% from the field and 37% from three. However, in the bubble, White showed his true potential, averaging 21 points, 6 assists, and 45% from three. He was the star in the Spurs' fading offense, and he was also the X factor on the Spurs' defense. He's always guarding the opposing team's best player. Last season, he held stars like Dame, Harden, and Russ to a collective shooting percentage of 37% from the field, and he led the bubble in charges taken by over 2 times. He and backcourt running mate DeJounte Murray make up what looks like one of the NBA's best future defensive backcourts. Although in many people's minds White's offense takes a backseat to his defense, he's still great on that end of the court. He's never really had the keys to the offense due to the aging stars like DeMar DeRozan and LaMarcus Aldridge taking most of the shots. But when the Spurs needed him, he stepped up. Look at the bubble. Unfortunately, the Spurs missed the playoffs, but White showed out and did all he could. I'd like to see the Spurs trade DeRozan and Aldridge so that they can start rebuilding around White and begin a new era in San Antonio. White isn't a superstar, but he truly has top 15 point guard potential if he's in the right situation.
Number 6, Derrick Rose. This selection may be considered biased from some, since my favorite player happens to be Derrick Rose, but I truly feel he is underrated. Derrick Rose just put together 2 consecutive seasons when he looked like more than a serviceable player, with averages around 18, 2, and 6 on an efficient 49% from the field. The Windy City Assassin is dominant again. As a diehard Derrick Rose fan, I've grown to dislike when people refer to a simple layup as vintage Derrick Rose. It's not vintage. It's pure bucket getting. He never lost that. He never lost that ability to score at will. It was only a matter of the situation that he can be in, which Detroit gives him the situation to dominate. People like to say he's not a great three-point shooter, but 100% he's no Mark Strength from the three-point line. We can admit that. But when he's playing off the ball this year, he shot a really, really good 42.2% on catch-and-shoot threes, which is why I personally feel he should be traded to the Los Angeles Lakers, where he'd be playing off the ball for the most part with LeBron James mainly being the guy running the show. One fun fact about him would be, per 36 minutes, Derrick Rose has averages of 25, 8, and 3. Moving on, Kristaps Porzingis. The Latvian Giant's skill set is out of this world. In year 4, Porzingis started off a tad bit rusty due to his torn ACL recovery. As expected, once he began to kick off the rust, he began to dominate. A 7'3" forward/center has the ability to handle the ball similar to a guard, stretch the floor at an extremely good level while still being a more than serviceable defender. A fun fact about KP would be how he averages 17 points per game on 39, 34, 73 at the power forward for the regular season, but greatly brings that up to around 24 points per game on 48, 40, 83 shooting splits at the center position. If he can maintain health, you may see a future superstar. Marcus Smart. Marcus Smart is one of the league's best defenders. Offensively, his game isn't anything that's stand out, but his defense is out of this world. It's exactly what separates him from the average guard or simply player in general. Marcus tends to always be in the right place at the right time, whether it's just in there for an interception or he's shaking a charge to get an offensive foul and calling the opposing team. We saw him somewhat elevate his game throughout the playoffs with multiple 20-point games, getting the Boston Celtics back in the games they really had no business being in some situations. He made some really big shots, although his percentages don't tell the entire story. If Smart can continue to improve his offensive game, becoming a more consistent jump shooter on the ball or off the ball, he could possibly put Boston over the edge. Christian Wood. Christian Wood is a less notable name in comparison to people priorly mentioned, but his talent speaks for itself. The first half of the season, he played behind the eventually traded center Andre Drummond. After the Drummond trade, Wood saw his averages increase from around 11-6-1 to 24-10-2. The Detroit Pistons must look to resign Wood, simply because he's an extremely coveted player. Teams are going to go after him because why wouldn't you want a young 25-year-old big man that can stretch the floor, play defense, and overall solve a lot of teams' problems. A lot of, bad three-point shooting teams could use a big guy like him to stretch the floor. Lastly, John Collins. The 6'9" forward for Atlanta is practically never talked about. Obviously, we know that his stats don't exactly contribute to winning, playing on a terrible Hawks team, but his talent needs to be recognized. With the averages that people might even be shocked to hear, 22-10-2, on insane 58-40-80 shooting splits, his talent is obviously there. He's an extremely versatile defender for the Atlanta Hawks. His game complements Trae Young's game perfectly. Whether the 1-2 punch runs a simple pick and roll or a simple pick and pop, they can dominate the game in a multitude of ways. Hopefully, in the nearby future, we see them in the playoffs, on the big stage, where Trae Young can also prove that he is a player that can contribute to wins, which, in return, hopefully sees John Collins do the same. I think his ability to get up there for alley-oops, a pick and roll is deadly. If they continue to run that more, it could be one of the most lethal moves in the entire NBA. Honorable mentions. There's only 2 honorable mentions I have here. I would say it's Bojan Bogdanovic of the Utah Jazz. His ability to shoot the ball extremely well. He averages about 20 points per game. And he's also an extremely serviceable defender for them that tends to guard the opposing team's best wing, depending on who the team is. Unless you have Royce O'Neal guarding them, but mainly for the most part, it's Bojan Bogdanovic. Him not being there for the Utah Jazz in the playoffs might have been the deciding factor if they allow the Nuggets to come back from down 3-1, or if they win. It would allow him to have Donovan Mitchell to have another shooter that he could pass the ball to or take the pressure off of him. And Jeremy Grant. We saw him play for the Denver Nuggets. We saw his defense throughout the entire playoffs. He gave Kawhi Leonard some issues. Sometimes it looked like he was giving LeBron James some issues, but we all know what happens with LeBron James. For the most part, he just tears apart whoever's guarding him. But Jeremy Grant had a couple of big shots. It was a little stretch going there at the playoffs where he just wasn't making anything. But at least he's one of those players who, if he's not dominating on offense, he can at least make up for it on the defensive end. And that's exactly what he was doing. He's a hustle player. He's one of those hype players where if your crowd is dead and you're at home, you can throw an alley-oop to him. He's going to go crazy. The entire crowd's going to go nuts with an alley-oop dunk by Jeremy Grant. Somebody who's a free agent this year. Somebody who a lot of people are rumored to sign with the Los Angeles Lakers, a lot of contending teams, or we sign back with the Nuggets and help them contend for a championship. There you have it. Those are our top 10 most underrated players in the league. We hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a like and subscribe for more informative basketball content.